Anytime you can beat Syracuse for a recruit, well, I'd call that a good day.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Thank you all for joining us. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season big with a return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get one started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. No football this weekend. Quiet, right? Still tons of news that we got to talk about. A new commitment, and BC flips this commitment from another Power 4 school. I'll explain who that is, and I will give you all the details. More recruiting news behind the scenes as well. I have updates for you on a bunch of different things there. Additionally, basketball opens their season, and hockey had a big weekend as well. I'm going to jump into all of that on today's show. Now, BC had 24 commitments, and I had been teasing you guys. I said there's 2 silent commitments. I can't tell you about one of them because he's committed elsewhere. You saw Spencer Dickow, the general manager, teasing on both of them. And I was told that it was going to take until next week for him to announce. Well, he jumped a little early. And so you now have a commitment from BB&N school in Massachusetts, running back, class of 2025, Bo MacCormack. Now, this is one of the most exciting local recruits in the state of Massachusetts because he's a dynamic offensive star. He just ran this past weekend against Tabor Academy for 200 and I think it was 40 yards, 280 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He does everything. 6 feet tall, about 200 pounds. He is coming to Boston College because he flipped from Syracuse. That's number 2 for flips of the season for Boston College from the Orange. So I'm sure the Orange fans are all out there going, yeah, AJ, we were pushing him out because we had something else. Baloney. This is the second commitment that they've lost to BC. Now, this is funny because obviously BC plays Syracuse later this week, a noon start if you had not seen the press release yet. And so Boston College, when they lost him, I just assumed BC wasn't showing much interest. But given what Bo has done so far during his senior year, I could see why BC was like all of a sudden like, whoa, maybe we made a bit of a mistake here. We got to get this guy. Because every game, if you open the Boston Globe, the Boston Herald on like a Sunday every week, the BB&N game recaps are just loaded with Bo MacCormack stuff, and it's usually the headline for their sports in the area. Now, is he the top recruit in the state? Probably not. I mean, Hardy Watts is going to probably get that, and then you've got a couple defensive ends that went to Duke. But is he one of the most explosive offensive players that's in the state? That I would say yes. You got Mekhi Dodd, who's already committed to BC at a Catholic Memorial at running back, and now you have Bo MacCormack. That's a great 1-2 punch in terms of local commitments. And so you get a guy that has a lot of buzz. Could he win Gatorade Player of the Year for the state of Massachusetts? There's a possibility he could. Is this a guy that is going to be one of the better local recruits? I think so. Like the comments that are going on about MacCormack are really, really good. Like if you listen to what his coach said, and I'm going to read his quote. His coach said his coach Mike Willie. I think it's Willie. Bo MacCormack, there's not enough adjectives, not enough superlatives. Bo MacCormack is a league of his own. Obviously a great player, but watch him to be a teammate. Watch him in the weight room. Watch him in class. This kid is an unbelievable kid who happens to be an unbelievable football player. I'm so glad BC stole him from Syracuse. It's just a great feeling. Now, BC has 3 commitments at running back. Nolan James, Mekhi Dodd, who I just mentioned, and Bo MacCormack. Now, all 3, from what I've heard, have pretty solid interest. Now, McCormack, he obviously had Syracuse, but he also had Rutgers. He had Nebraska. He had a bunch of G5 schools, so he's had interest. Mackay Dodd, I think, has been quiet, but I've heard buzz that there's been some bigger schools that have looked at him. But he's stuck. He's firm at BC. And then Nolan James. Nolan James is the surprise because this is a kid from DePaul Catholic in New Jersey. He's been the first committed to Boston College. He's been around for a while. I've heard that there's a lot of bigger schools that have really liked him, but he hasn't even entertained the offer and hasn't until Notre Dame offered. And he's going to take an official visit to Notre Dame next week as they play Florida State, paced Florida State, excuse me. So this is that's a big one to watch. He said, this is an offer I had to look on. Anytime a BC guy is getting interest by Notre Dame and is showing interest back, of course, that's something to watch. I don't think of Bo MacCormack as a backup plan if Nolan James goes. I look at what BC has at running back. They have, Trayshawn Ward and Kai Robichaux both leaving. You can expect that they're gone, right? You have Alex Broom coming back from a leg injury. So that leaves you Turbo Richard, Day Jones, and you've got, the new kids coming in. So I could see them wanting 3. I could see them needing 3 given the depth that they have. I mean, look at what you went into the season having. You had all those guys. And then Turbo gets hurt during camp. Day Jones gets hurt, and I'm sitting there watching practice, and you're seeing guys like Anthony Ferrucci taking first team snaps because they don't have anybody. So, given especially that they have the room in terms of scholarship flexibility to take more, I think 3 seems like a good number. So, get to cross your fingers on Nolan James. Notre Dame has 1 running back already committed, a kid from Jesuit. They are going to be pushing for another one. So, they're going to push for James, and we'll have to wait to see what happens here. BC's been their guy. I mean, this kid has been to BC half dozen times. I mean, I feel like. I mean, he went to the Michigan State game. He was there for a bunch during the spring. So he's been around the program for a while. But, when a school like Notre Dame calls, some kids are just going to answer it. So that's where that lands. And there's still one more silent commitment left. And I already told you, basically, it's the one with the Irish flag. And Andy Quinn probably fits that because how many Irish people did BC have on for an official visit? Makes it pretty easy to figure that one out, right? Now, in a moment, I want to get into the basketball season. I want to talk about what this is going to, BC tips off. We're going to get into what that looks like. Who are they going to be playing and what should we really be expecting for the season? Let's talk expectations, talk all about that. All coming up in just a moment. Now, 5 Hour Energy is one of our best friends, and they have been a passionate football fan, and they know it's not just a hobby. It's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgate, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. Now, BC's playing Syracuse this weekend. It's an early one. You're going to need that energy to get there early, get your tailgate set up, cheer on your team, and do a little post game too. Now, 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what your team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you keep fueled through the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. When you're done with this episode, check out Locked On College Basketball, another great podcast hosted by some great Locked On hosts. You find that on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I bring this up because college basketball is back this week. It starts today. And for the Boston College Eagles, they finished their home and home series with Citadel, the Citadel, a team they beat last year on the road in South Carolina, I believe, to start the season as well. Now, what is the expectations for this season for basketball? What should we be looking at? Like what are some reasonable hopes? Now, I looked at their out of conference schedule and I think it's tough. I think they've got some tough games in there. And I'm looking at, who they're playing and who I think they have a chance to beat. And I'm a little worried that they're going to start off with some L's pretty early. Like the first, they play right away again against Citadel, right? Their second game is against sorry, is against VCU. The team that was projected to win by the media to win the A10. That's not an easy way to start the season with a team that you don't know what you're going to get. You have your out of conference multi-team uh, tournament is filled with teams that are pretty good or projected to again be competitive. Yes, they're bad teams, but you're not right. You're playing against High Point, Old Dominion. You should be able to get some wins there. So I look at the VCU game. I look at South Carolina. South Carolina was a borderline. I think they were actually a tournament team last year. So you've got some tough out of conference games to start off. I look at this season, and what am I hoping for? I'm hoping Boston College can find their identity. You got some names out there that I know a lot of folks are. You guys may not even know much about that I think should get you excited for the season. Dion Brown is the one that I'm watching a lot. This is a guy that averaged, almost 20 points a game last year for UMBC. He's from Great Barrington. He's a shooter. BC needs a shooter bad. So you got a guy finally that can shoot. And honestly, if you're looking at what's going to be the strength of this team versus the strength of last year, Quentin Post clearly was the strength of the team last year. Like when he was on, they were good. But sometimes when your bigs are not good and your guards aren't good, you lose games. And I feel like this team's guard play could be sneaky good this year. You got to start with the two starting guards, Chaz Kelly and DJ Hand. Kelly is not going to be a shooter, I don't think. I don't expect him. He's more of the ball handler. But Hand, this could be his season. This could be the year Donald Hand earns his 4-star reputation. His first year he was out with a knee injury. Last year, I think it was Earl Grant that said at the beginning of last year, like it's going to take him some time to come back. And it did take him some time to come back, but he hadn't been all that consistent as well. But he's going to have to play a big role this year. And if he can be a shooter and a scorer, and you have him alongside Dion Brown, who can also be a scorer, you're in good shape. Because I do think Chad Venning will do what you need to do as a big. He's not going to be the same. This is the kid the center that they got from St. Bonaventure. He's not. If you're expecting him to do what Quentin Post did, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening. This is not a 3-point shooter. This is not a guy that can spread the floor. But he, I think, is a better guy, better lane clogger and space taker. Basically, like he's a big body that's going to take a lot of space. The big thing with Venning is can he get out of foul trouble? That's a big issue with him. I mean, that was Post's issue too, but these guys are going to have to stay out of foul trouble. Now, I've talked to a few different people who know the program, and there's a lot of excitement about Jaden Hastings as well. Jaden Hastings is the other center, big athletic guy. You got to have to trust Earl Grant on this one because he didn't do anything last year. I don't think he played at all. And the film and from what I heard from scouts is his offensive game when he got to BC was pretty limited. But you know who else was really limited when he got there? Quentin Post and Devin McLaughlin. Like Earl has done a nice job between McLaughlin, Post, James Karnick with some of these bigs that they brought in. Yes, I know Armani Mighty flamed out. But maybe this is the year that Hastings, he's an athletic kid. This is a kid that can make a lot of moves and can do a lot. Maybe this is the year that he finally does it. Now, you also have, I think, one of the more exciting freshmen that they've had in a long time. And again, it goes back to shooting. You've got some guards that can finally shoot. I think that's one piece that kind of goes under the radar is that, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, but Dion Brown can shoot, Donald Hand can shoot, and Luka Taves can shoot. This is the new freshman shooting guard that they have, who I've heard I've talked to some folks close to BC. They're saying this guy could be up there for ACC Rookie of the Year. This is a guy that by the end of the year could be like a starter for BC. A lot of excitement about this kid, like a spot shooter, a guy that can, if Earl Grant can actually have a team with a bunch of shooters, that's going to be a fun team to watch because it feels like every year you bring in guys and like you have like years where Mason Madsen struggles. Like he was better last year, but BC needs a guy that can shoot, and they've got a bunch now. So if you were to ask me about 2 weeks ago what I was thinking for BC for this year, I would have been as gloom and doom as you could get. Like, I just did not see where this team was going to go. I looked at teams around the ACC and said, look at like what Louisville's doing. Like that team's going to be much better. Georgia Tech's brought in a great recruiting class. Florida State's always going to get better. Where's BC going to fit into all this, right? What's BC going to do? And I thought that was going to end with BC, near the bottom. And part of me still thinks that's going to happen. Part of me still going, there's way too many question marks and I just don't see the answers yet. But there's another part of me that says, you know, everyone's expecting a big step back for BC basketball from last year. When I look at what BC basketball did last year to make the NIT, it honestly wasn't all that impressive. Like, they didn't have a ton of big wins. They played under 500 for ACC play. They were 8-12. They finished 20-16. Could BC like win like 17, 18 games? Sure, if things go right. 16 wins? I feel like that's not that out of that realm of possibility. That's not that huge of a step back. It probably won't make you to the NIT, but it still is showing that this team isn't that far away. And then you're bringing in a killer freshman recruiting class. It could still, they're still looking at some guys that's going to make it really good. So I look at this and I say, the floor, it could go to as bad to 10 wins or so if things are as bad as maybe more as the gloominess of myself could think it could go. The highs, could it go 18, 19 wins? Never know. They're out of conference schedule. If they can get past VCU in that game against South Carolina, there's a bunch of wins on there. They just got to prevent the usual BC whoopsie daisy that they get every year where they lose to some dumb team. And, you get the the epitome of brutality tweet from John Rothstein of, was he part of the stadium now? So I don't know. I don't know. I don't get good vibes about this team. I don't think there's a lot of excitement about it, which is kind of a bummer because you would hope to build off the excitement from last year. But, winning is what solves everything. And there may be skepticism about this team right now, but if they go out there and start winning some games, like if they go out there and beat VCU game number 2, probably BC fans still wouldn't care because they probably don't understand how big of a win that would be. But it still would be some, if they get past that, there's a bunch of wins in front of them that they can get a good start to their season going. That would get fans into the door. There you get momentum there. But you have to wait and see what happens. So it's going to be the game number 1 tomorrow at Citadel. I'm excited to see. I want to see how BC starts off. Are they going to come out slow and sluggish and let a Citadel team kind of stay around? Because if I remember correctly, last year against Citadel, BC struggled for most of the game. And so this game, I'm hoping that they're going to be able to kind of get things back in track and set the pace and take care of business. You got to be able to against this team like Citadel. We'll talk more about that later this week. In our final segment, I want to talk hockey. As the Eagles took care of business, downing a top 10 school twice on the road. I'll explain why this is so exciting in just a moment. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. I was just looking up the FanDuel line for Boston College and Syracuse, and FanDuel has Boston College as a 1.5 point favorite. Now, many of you, that's a very polarizing odds, right? I think it's good because I still think BC could still win this game. But there's some of you out there who rightfully are skeptical and have seen what Kyle McCord has done and think BC won't have a chance. So maybe you want to get on the FanDuel. You can get yourself the hunch in the middle of the game as well. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and we're wrapping things up. And I want to talk a little hockey talk because BC hockey improved with 2 wins this weekend against St. Cloud. Now, St. Cloud, I don't know much about the school itself. I know that they're good at hockey, but BC went in and won 4-1 and 2-1. Jacob Fowler had 2 great games. BC improves to 5-1 on the season. But most importantly, it's more ranked wins for Boston College. They started the season off with 2 wins against Michigan State. They beat Western Michigan, and they headed to Minnesota and took care of number 10 St. Cloud. You got the Hagens brothers. You got one, I think it's Michael Hagens, who has 6 games now as a freshman with a point. You have Will Vogt with another big goal. Will Vogt, right around the election day, is getting some love here with the first goal of the series. And the second game, shout out to the defense. The defense was big, and they only let up 1 goal, so obviously Jacob Fowler had a big game. But there was Dean Letourneau got ejected for a major with like 2 minutes left, and so St. Cloud pulls the goalie. It's 6-on-4, and BC still prevented a goal. So this team is already starting to line up. This team is already looking good. You got Gabe Perreault again with more goals. He scored the one of the 2 goals, the game winner basically against St. Cloud on Saturday. You have their captain Eamon Powell scoring the first goal. They come up from behind and they win again. BC has come from behind a couple times this season to win these games, and so they're showing a lot of grit. This is a fun team. It's not as star heavy right now. Gabe Perreault is definitely showing that he can do it, but it's not as star heavy as like what you had Cutter Gauthier and Will Smith last year. You got a lot of just guys doing the right thing, and I like the how it's spread out over this team right now. You've got pulling up the statistics right now, but if you pull up the amount of goals that have been scored, you have 1, 2, 3. I already lost it. Forget it. You have a bunch of guys with goals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 guys with goals. Gabe Perreault has 5. Will Vogt has 4. Ryan Leonard has 3. And you got a bunch of guys with 1. That's pretty good. So where does BC hockey stand now? They're still going to be number 2 in the country. Denver is the top team in the country, and they're just playing great hockey right now. I don't think they lost this weekend. And so BC, they're off next to Maine. And Maine, I believe, is a top 10 team as well. And this is one of those series where BC hosts Maine. Maine's too far away for the home and home, so they have 2 games against Maine, 1 on Friday and 1 on Sunday. Because I was going to say, like, you can't have 1 on Saturday because that's when the Syracuse game is. But they have 2 games against Maine. That's gonna be a fun one for BC. Can they grab 2 more wins? They're doing really well. And I also want to shout out. I've not done. I don't usually talk about them because I don't know a ton about them. But women's hockey beat Clarkson, who was a top 5 team. They beat them twice, and congratulations to them. And I know they won another game as well against Merrimack. Yeah, so they beat Clarkson twice last week. They beat Merrimack twice. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now, and they play Maine as well. They're going to have a big party over here. Actually, they go to Maine. So congratulations to women's hockey. So tomorrow's show, going to recap the Citadel game. I will get into any other news on Wednesday's show. We'll have Mitch Wolf on, and Friday's show we'll have Mitch Wolf on. So it's a busy week now that hockey and basketball are going on. So thank you all for listening. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247, and thank you all who are daily listeners. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you enjoy our show, and thank you for making Locked On Boston College your first daily listen to every day. And I'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.